Okay, let's jump right in. We're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating chapter today, Deuteronomy chapter 5.
That's right. And it's presented not as some distant memory, but as something happening, well, right then and there.
Exactly. A covenant being made at Horeb.
Yeah.
And the text makes a point of saying it's not with past generations.
Mm. But with the people actually present. With us, even us, who are all of us here alive today, is how it puts it. It's very immediate.
Super immediate. And this is where it gets really intense.
Mm-hmm.
The claim is the Lord spoke to them directly.
Face to face, it says.
Face to face, out of the middle of a fire on the mountain.
I mean, just picturing that. A voice coming out of fire.
It must have been overwhelming. So much so that Moses apparently had to stand between them and the divine presence.
Yeah, the text mentions they were afraid specifically because of the fire and that voice. It says face to face, but then immediately pivots to their fear.
It really highlights the sheer power, the terror maybe, of that kind of direct encounter.
Absolutely. And out of that fire, out of that direct communication, come these foundational commands.
Starting with that core declaration, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery.
And that context is crucial, isn't it? The one giving the commands is the one who just liberated them.
Right. It's not abstract. It's rooted in their immediate history, their freedom.
So these principles are like the framework for their new life as a free people.
First up, you shall have no other gods before me. Total loyalty, singular focus.
Pretty unambiguous. And right after that, the prohibition against idols.
Yeah, no making images of anything in heaven, on earth, in the water. Very comprehensive.
And the text explains the reason. The divine presence is described as a jealous God.
Which sounds harsh, but it's tied to consequences for those who reject this relationship down to the third and fourth generation.
But then contrasted with this immense expression of love, showing love to 1,000 generations for those who love and obey.
That scale difference is just, wow. 1,000 generations versus 3 or 4. It really emphasizes the preference for love and faithfulness.
It certainly does. It frames the stakes very clearly.
Then there's the command about not misusing the divine name.
Right. Taking it in vain. The text is blunt. The Lord won't hold anyone guiltless who does that. It speaks to the sacredness of the name itself.
Absolutely. Next is the Sabbath. Keep it holy.
And this one gets a really interesting explanation in Deuteronomy 5, doesn't it? It's not just take a day off.
No, it's 6 days of labor, and the 7th is a Sabbath to the Lord. But the key part, especially here,
is the connection to Egypt.
yes. It explicitly says everyone rests. You, your kids, your servants, male and female, your ox, your donkey, your other animals, and even the foreigner living among you.
So that your male and female servants may rest as you do.
Exactly. And the reason given. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm.
So the Sabbath command here is directly tied to their liberation from slavery. Rest becomes a right, a commemoration of freedom for everyone.
Which was, pretty radical for the ancient world. Universal, mandated rest rooted in shared liberation.
Truly remarkable. Then it shifts focus slightly to the family.
Honor your father and mother, a core principle for social stability.
And in this version, like in Exodus, there's a promise attached.
Right, so that you may live long and that it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Long life and prosperity linked to honoring parents.
It grounds the community's success in the strength of its family units.
Then we get into those core prohibitions that are, fundamental to any society.
The big thou shalt nots.
Exactly. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor.
Just clear, direct lines protecting life, marriage, property, and reputation. The basic building block.
Couldn't be clearer. These are about actions, things you do to others.
But the final one goes a bit deeper, doesn't it?
Ah, yes. The command against coveting.
You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not set your desire on your neighbor's house or land, his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
It's not just about the act of taking, like stealing. It's about the desire, wanting what isn't yours.
Which is fascinating because it's regulating an internal thought, an attitude. It suggests the law aims to shape not just behavior, but the heart.
That's a great point. It goes right to the root.
So those are the core commands they heard.
And Deuteronomy 5 emphasizes how they heard them. In a loud voice, from the whole assembly's perspective, straight out of the fire, the cloud, the deep darkness.
And crucially, it says, and he added nothing more. That was it. That was the direct message before they were written on the stone tablets,
Just those words, spoken directly by the divine.
which sets up the people's reaction, their response to this, well, this overwhelming experience.
So what happened next? How did they process hearing this voice from the fire?
Well, the text says when they heard it, saw the mountain blazing, they were completely terrified.
Understandably so.
All the leaders, the heads of the tribes, and the elders came to Moses.
And what did they say?
They acknowledged the power, the glory, the majesty they'd witnessed. They even said something like, wow, God can speak to humans and they can live.
So they recognized the miracle of surviving it.
Yes, but immediately followed it with, but if we keep hearing the voice of the Lord our God any longer, we'll die. This great fire will consume us.
The intensity was just too much. They felt they were at their absolute limit.
Exactly. And they asked that crucial question you highlighted earlier. What mortal has ever heard the voice of the living God speaking out of fire as we have and survived?
Having survived it, they were desperate not to repeat the experience.
Precisely. So their fear led them to make a request.
They asked Moses to be the intermediary, right?
They did. They said, you go near and listen to all that the Lord our God says. Then you tell us whatever the Lord our God tells you.
And they promised.
We will listen and obey. They opted for mediated communication over that terrifying direct access.
And how did the divine respond to this plea?
According to the text, the Lord heard them and said to Moses, essentially, what they said is good, I've heard it. Their request, born out of fear and awe, was affirmed.
So the fear itself wasn't seen as, like, a failure.
Apparently not. In fact, the divine wish expressed right after is quite moving.
What was that?
Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me and keep all my commands always, so that it might go well with them and their children forever.
Wow. So the desire was for that sense of awe and commitment to last, not just the immediate terror.
Exactly. That posture of reverence and obedience was the goal.
So the people were told to go back to their tents.
Yes, return to your tents. But Moses was instructed to stay.
Why him specifically?
But you stay here with me so that I may give you all the commands, decrees, and laws you are to teach them. Basically, Moses was now designated to receive the rest of the laws and instructions for them to follow in the Promised Land.
So the system shifted right there. From direct address to the whole group to mediated instruction through Moses.
Correct. And the final charge given is really a summary of their responsibility going forward.
Which is?
So be careful to do what the Lord your God has commanded you. Do not turn aside to the right or to the left. Stay precisely on the path.
Don't deviate at all.
Walk in all the way that the Lord your God has commanded you. And the reason, so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days in the land that you will possess.
Their well-being, their future, is explicitly tied to this careful obedience to the commands received through Moses.
It sets the stage for the rest of the book, really.
Looking back at the whole chapter, it's that contrast that really stands out, isn't it?
Which contrast is that?
Between that initial, overwhelming, terrifying moment of God speaking directly from the fire.
Right, that raw, unmediated encounter.
And then the immediate shift, requested by the people and approved by the divine, to a system where Moses acts as the go-between.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift in how the divine communicates with the community. From direct, awe-inspiring, almost unbearable presence
to instruction delivered through a trusted human leader. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does, about the nature of God, human limits, what's possible in that encounter, and maybe what's gained or even lost when you move from that direct fire to a mediated word. It leaves you pondering the different ways connection and communication can happen and why one path was chosen over the other going forward.